Evening, everybody. I said evening as we was coming in, but evening, everybody. I've got Joe, my son, on camera. So,
just do a statement. Can you guys give us a thumbs up so we can just make sure we can hear?
everybody, can you hear?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right. Okay. Right. So I've got Joe on camera to save me switching cameras and running around like a lunatic. Something's just popped up on our screen. So for those, some of you know me, some of you won't know me. My name's Ed Oliver. I started turning back in 2013 on a 2-day birthday present. It's wood turning experience, which I did with a fellow called Tom Pockley. He's a well-known turner. I've been turning, well, now 40 odd years, highly skilled. And I fell in love with it, much to my surprise, because I actually started my working life as a furniture maker. I qualified and couldn't get out of there quick enough. Hated it. So I went into this birthday treat come up. I went along for a 2-day wood turning course, and typical me, I came home and said to my wife, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And she knows every birthday treat I come back and say, oh, I'm going to do this, and I never do. But unfortunately for her, wood turning I did do. So within 6 weeks, we converted a double garage into a workshop. And then I started my apprenticeship as a wood turner. I used to spend 40 hours plus a week turning. I went back to Tom for another 4 or 5 2-day sessions until he told me to go away and not darken his doorstep again. So that's how I got into wood turning. Tom and I are great friends now. We keep in regular contact. He'll pop over for a cup of tea. And he'll touch some of the things I do because they aren't quite the way that he taught me at times. So that's a little bit how I got into it. So as a quick tour of the workshop, I'm standing at the far end. The workshop is actually a triple garage now. It's part of a barn. It's 30 foot by 20. So we've got a couple of garage doors. I've got numerous unfinished bits and pieces of that just here. A trade series industrial extractor, which runs an extractor system, and it's being revamped at the moment because I'm moving the workshop round because I've been doing YouTube live demos on a Saturday morning. So we run, you'll see the setup in a minute. It's a bit Heath Robinson, but we've just ordered a gantry and a bit more kit, so we're taking it serious. As everybody was laughing, how clean's your workshop? Well, it's really clean. I've got one of these. This is an industrial vacuum cleaner, and I use it to tidy up the workshop rather than sweep. I also use it when I'm holoforming to get the rubbish out of the holoform, or the shavings, I should say. So this end I process timber. So I bring the timber in through the garage doors, and then I've got this old Sedgwick TA315 240 volt table saw. It will cut up to 4 inches thick. It's a powerful old beast. It's on a 16 amp supply, all that sort of stuff. And then behind where Joe is, he'll just pan round. We got a bandsaw, a full-size bandsaw. It's a Charnwood. I bought it when I very first started turning, not knowing that I was going to be processing a lot of wood. But it's been a loyal servant. Then over here, you can't see behind the board, I've got a mortiser because I came up with an idea to bore some holes in some of my pieces of work. Then I've got a shavings burner stacked with blanks at the moment. That keeps me nice warm in the winter. And then a thickness of planer here. It's only a 12-inch bed. Actually, it could do with being a bit wider. So you learn as you go along. I've had that a few years, but that might be a bit of kit that gets swapped out a bit later. So then we come through to the middle of the workshop, and this is where my lathe setups are. And I run 2 Trade Series 1628s. We've got one over the back here. This was my original lathe. This is well battered and decorated, as you can see. And then a few years ago, I bought myself a second-hand VB 36, and that's turned some monstrous pieces of wood. It's the MIDI lathe, so it actually has got a tailstock bar, but I use it as a bowl turning lathe realistically, so that's tucked away under the workbench here. Then we come round, and then I've got tools under the lathe, tools along the shelf, and then I've got a rack here that's full of hollowing tools. I do a lot of hollowing, so there's virtually every make of hollowing tool that you can think of there. There's Rolling Monroes, there's Exocets, there's Woodcuts, there's Robert Saltby, Simon Oaks. But I do 90% of my turning, to be quite honest, with this Simon Oak little 6mm carbide cutter. I'll just see a monitor so you can see that now. That and the hook tip version. And I can just slide the grips off of this and put it into big handles to go deeper. But one of the Exocets I've got there extended is around about 7 foot long. So it's like a lance. And yes, I've used it fully extended. Then I've got a tool chest here. Like most wood turners, I've got more jaws than I'm ever going to use. I actually run about 8 super precision chucks. I've probably got every jaws, and then I run 4 Patriots, and I've got the jaws, and I've got vacuum chucks and all sorts of stuff there. Most of my sharpening, well, all my sharpening nowadays, I do on the Saltby Pro Edge system. I find it nice and simple, and this is with a diamond belt. I quite like that. So that's how I do my sharpening. Now what I've got in the workshop is I've got a cable here that's suspended around the workshop, so I can hang all my power carvers and that off overhead. So if I'm working on a lathe, I do a lot of work with power tools and power carvers and rafts and things. I just clip them on here, hangs down out of my way, and I can use my tool. Now, that wasn't my idea, because after I finished learning to turn with Tom, I went off, and I've been very fortunate. I spent a couple of days with Stuart Mortimer. This is a Stuart Mortimer idea. And I thought, oh, wow, I like that. I'll do that. So that was Stuart Mortimer. I've spent a day with Nick Agar. I was fortunate to go on a day's course with him. I've spent a few days with Mark Stanger doing design stuff. Andrew Hall, I've spent a day with making a hat. Little story about Andrew. We was at Axminster Tools making hats, and there I was going into all of this hat, and I thought, well, I'll get a cut in here by just flicking the gouge up, and I flicked the gouge up, and I was the only person that dismounted the piece of wood from the lathe, and Andrew was devastated.
You've got chat asking what the microwave's for.
Right, so that's a little story about that. Then let's come over. We've actually got a full kitchen in here. That is not because Mrs. Oliver kicks me out. Microwave for drying wood, killing woodworm, and anything else that I want to throw in there. An oven so I can bake wood, and I also use it to heat wax to wax the edge of blanks. Then there's a fridge behind my sign, a sink over there, so I keep my mess in the workshop rather than putting paint all over the sink indoors or the sinks indoors, because I'm not known for my finesse when washing out brushes, and I'm not known for much finesse when I'm spraying paint around, if anybody's seen a Saturday morning demo. So it's fully contained. The cupboards hold painting equipment and
little hand carvers and power carvers and all sorts of rubbish. And then I've got a whole array up there of power tools, planes, sanders, and whatever else you can think of. So that's my workshop tour. I do earn a living from wood turning, running Oliver's Wood Turning the shop. I'm actually a member of the RPT as a professional turner, so I do a lot of teaching. I was teaching before this started, maybe a day or two a week. Maximum people I would have in here is 2. Normally 1-to-1 is the way I like to work, but I allow someone to bring someone with them, so I'll do 2. My work, I sell a bit. I was doing some shows. I started with the normal craft fairs, but my work takes, I'll show you some work in a minute, my work takes a while, some of it. So I work on a realistic hourly rate, so that's the price of the piece. So I went off and started doing Wisley and another one called Hydel. These are 4 or 5 day craft fairs. The stands are expensive, but the people come in are expecting to pay more for the work. And we did that for 3 years, and we sold a bit of work, but when you worked out the amount of time you were standing there, the amount you paid out doing the shows and the amount you took over the 3 years, we just about broke even. I've just flipped over to the mic. Joe's going, mic. So we just about broke even. So I thought I'll give up with that. So we launched a website for it, but life's a bit busy, and the last thing I do is update my website. So as to selling work, I'm pretty rubbish at it, really. So I do more from teaching and demonstrating around the club. So I do a lot of demonstrating down in the southeast, the south of England. I've been up to Norfolk a few times, and I was invited to do Turn East a couple of years ago. So I did that. So, and I get more pleasure out of demonstrating and teaching really nowadays. And I get a real buzz if I've got people that take up wood turning and achieve something. And I've made some great friends from doing this. So that's where my thing is. I like to turn different things. So I sort of get an idea and then roll with it and expand it out and roll with it until I get to what I think is the finished piece. And I might do a couple, and then that's it. I sort of, boom. And something needs to inspire me. So I've got lots of bits of ugly wood. I call it ugly wood sitting around. And one day I'll just walk in there, not planning to turn, look at the piece of wood and think, oh, I know what I'm going to do with that now. So on the lathe it will go. So on the VB at the moment, that's one of my latest pieces, but it was started right at the beginning of this year. Joe will move the camera around. This is a bit of elm. In the back, it's got great big voids coming through, so I'm going to expose them a bit more. If I turn my hand up, you can see there's voids here, but they're going to be exposed a bit more. But what I did is I gilded, rough turned it and gilded it, and don't say it, I know a lot of people think a lot of my turning is rough, but that's out of order. Might walk. So I've gilded the outside and lacquered it. And I spoke to Terry at Chestnut, and I said, we don't suggest lacquering your gild. And he said, oh no, it can crack. So I said, can it? I said, well, I've always done it, never had a problem. So this has had about 2 tubs of gilt cream on it, and about a tin of lacquer, and nothing's gone wrong. So someday in the near future, I will finish turning that, expose more of this, and then start sanding it up for polish. The other reason I keep lots of bits of ugly wood is for mounting, because if you're going to do a piece of work and spend a lot of time doing it, then just don't go and put it on an ordinary piece of wood. So the piece of wood that is going to go on to eventually. And this is what made me turn it, to be fair, because I discovered this piece of wood and I thought, oh, I'll come back. That will make a nice plinth for that piece of work. So I found this piece of elm board there. If I turn that around, you can see that through the camera. And that's going to be our plinth. So it's going to get sanded up and cleaned up. The other thing we didn't mention there, we've got a sandblaster. So I can sandblast things in there. This is a bit big for that, but I might come up with a cunning little plan to get half of it in, then the other half in. So I've collect pieces of wood for that sort of thing. So that's a rough tour of the workshop and a bit about how I got started in wood turning. Now, I keep walking away and talking. The mic's over here. I'm over here. You won't hear a thing. In the start of my turning,
In the beginning.
once upon a time. So I turned bowls, I turned oliforms, I did a bit of spindle turning, everything. Yeah.
Round and brown. Round and brown.
And it was all round and brown. So I went to our club. I'm a member of the Garden of England's Wood Turners, and we had a guy there that was turning at the time. Now he's gone over to dot art, drawing loads of little dots. But he was a really good turner, and he did a lot of stuff with colour and glue and different bits and pieces. So he did a demonstration this Saturday showing, because what he did, he used to wet turn things, and if they split, rather than throw them away, he used to cover it up and make it arty. So he did this demo showing us how it was done, and I went, wow, look at that. So off I went. So part of that journey, in the beginning of that journey, is I've never thrown this piece away. It doesn't come into public view often, but I made this. What an ugly piece of work. But it was using hot melt glue, and he'd used hot melt glue to decorate a piece of wood. If we bring that into the camera, you might be able to see it a bit more. So I did this. I forget what wood it was. I think it was chestnut or something. It was all cracked and horrible. So I did this as my first ever decorated piece of work. And what I said earlier is I start with something and then move on and move on. And I did several pieces of hot melt glue work, and I landed up, the finish of that was this piece that was called, or is called, Wired. It went to the first AWGB seminar that I went to in 2015. It didn't make top 50, but it was selected. They did another 8 or 10 pieces, Paul will know more than me, that went off to do another show, and it was selected to go off onto this backup sort of area. But the piece disappeared for 2 years. It seemed to go around being shown on the AWGB tour anyway. So that was hot melt glue. And that was the start of my journey into artistic work. Now, I have a lot of pieces.
Someone's just said cut the foot off the ugly piece and it'll work.
I'm not cutting the foot off the ugly piece. I like that. It shows you. So I have lots of pieces of work floating around the workshop like this. They're never going to do anything, but I'll mess around with different colours and stuff. To see if it will work. I've got a sign up on the screen saying Derek Lane is in the waiting room. Paul?
I think you're hosting, so you need to hit admit.
Not sure why. There's nobody in the waiting room.
Oh, right. It's just on my screen. It said Derek Lane waiting in the waiting room. I was going to say, I know him, so he's a member at our club.
Yeah.
So I have pieces like this. Pieces like this, where I mess around with colours and different paints and textures and stuff. And this piece, when I was messing around with it, I did it at a demo. I had a window of wood, and what had happened is earlier I messed around with windows and I did this piece. Now this has got to be the hardest piece of wood I've ever turned. It's a bit of burr ash. I've got windows and colours. The colours you might not see so well on the camera.
The camera's here, the monitor's there.
I'm holding it to the monitor rather than the camera. I'm letting Joe get there. He might be able to pick that up. It was done with blues and blacks to get the colour. And I thought, well, not missing the wood, we'll put some windows in so we could see the wood. But this thing was rock hard. Now, by this time, this was a few years ago, I knew how to hollow. I'd had my lessons with Tom teaching me how not to do it. I went in there one day, I'll tell you a little story. I went in with Tom and we was doing hollowing. So he said, right, we're going to hollow this hollow form. I said, okay. So he said, off you go then. So we got down and I've got this tool and this thing's going bang, 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 like a kango hammer, bouncing around all over the place. And he just went, what are you doing? I said, Tom, I'm hollowing this and it. And he said, not like that, you're not. No. I then learned that the tool's supposed to run smooth. So anyway, so I got to this piece and I threw every tool in my hollowing rack at it. And it just would not cut properly. In the end, a good mates with Simon Oak. I phoned Simon up. I said, Simon, I've got this bit of wood. I said, it's like turning a bit of stone. He said, what is it? I said, ash. I said, it's just like a bit of stone. He said, well, it's probably a bit of stone. It's drawn up silica. He said, you're turning something like stone. I went, well, I didn't give up. Took me about 3 days, but it is hollow. So that is another piece. So that's a coloured piece. I do a lot of coloury burrs. So this is a bit of horse chestnut's one of my favourites. You won't pick up the depth of blues on this camera. I don't think. We'll do our best. We are getting some, and I do a lot of this type of colouring work. I really enjoy doing that with horse chestnut. But Phil Irons, I saw. I've never had a lesson with Phil, but I saw him and he started using gold with his colours, and I thought, wow. I don't copy people's work normally, but I thought, well, I would give it a go. So this piece has been on the go. Oh, Joe's messing around. Right, this piece has been on the go for a while. And it's horse chestnut again, horse chestnut burr. It's been primarily greens and blues and yellows, and I've started to gild in the voids. You can't really see the gild on there too much, I don't think, at the moment. You may be getting a bit of it. And it's taking ages, and I keep putting it down and leaving it and putting it down. The reason I run so many chucks is when I put a piece in the chuck to take it to finish, it won't come out of the chuck until it's finished. So that's why I run so many chucks. This has been in the chuck since, I don't know, beginning of the year. And
the rest.
I will just carry on. And then once I've finished gilding, it will go back in, get another sanding off and whatever else needs to be done to it. So that's why I run so many chucks. So I do a lot of colour staining sort of work. And I like to experiment a bit. So with Mark Stanger, he uses a lot of burrs, cutting and texturing and carving. So I did a design course with Mark and learned some of his techniques, his pyro texturing and stuff. And then I went on a bit of a journey with that. So because I'd done 2 days with Stuart Mortimer doing his twisted spiral twist, and I've got some spiral twist work dotted around. To get that right, you have got to have an eye for detail, which I haven't got. Oh, this was I've kept this. This was a little goblet made with Stuart Mortimer. with,
Camera's still here.
twisted. I keep holding the thing to the monitor. I'll give it to Joe. That was under Stuart Mortimer's guidance, a twisted stem goblet. It was quite good fun. But I'd gone to learn how he hollowed and how he went to do his binds and his twisted forms. And I did a few, but they weren't nice and even. And, you know, Stuart's work, a lot of you will know Stuart's work, is just different class out of this world.
I've just seen your hat.
So I then went to a different way at it and started piercing like this and using burn texturing that we've done with Mark. So this piece was all hollowed, sycamore, hollowed. Then I used a stencil to map out all the random pattern, because if you don't map it out, you'll end up with a silly little line of holes somewhere, which takes a few hours. And then I set about cutting it all out with a little power carver, and then burning every dot in. And it took some time, but I left the inside natural, the outside burnt, polished the rim, and that went up to the AWGB thing with me. 2017 was it? 2018, and that was one piece. And I did another piece where I went completely bananas and decided to burn it inside and out. Joe can have that at the camera. And they take 40, 50 hours to do, you know. So I explored that and been there, seen it, done it. And then it stopped. There was another piece that came with me to the AWGB, and I was quite pleased when it was selected in the top 50. Much smaller piece, more balanced, bit more detail, but that's gone. That's gone. So then from there, I started messing around with Golden Artist colours. So I then incorporated colouring with burnt, so it's all been burnt, textured and pierced. And this has got a two-tone colour. I'll give it to Joe to wave under the camera. And Golden Artist colours are interference paint, are airbrushed on. So I started messing around with colour like that, and created that. Might like it, might not. I quite like it. So that's where we went to on our journey. So after that, I sort of thought, well, I'll do thin. So I was turning thin, you know, wet wood, and I thought, well, I'm doing it my way. So I went to Andrew and did a hat, and little hat, and I told you the story about dismantling off the lathe, off it went flying. Didn't hit anybody, so it was all right. So I then went to Jerry Richardson. I had 2 days with Jerry, in my opinion, one of the finest artists that we've got. Well, up with a few others, obviously Nick and Mark, and fine detail. You know, Bimpo she worked with, and real concise detail. So I went to Jerry to have a mess around and learn a little bit. These were a couple of little bits that I did with Joey, learning her airbrushing and that. And I did a pot with a butterfly on it. But I've dropped the pot, because you can see there's not a lot left of it, but I've still got the butterfly. So it's never going anywhere. I'm going to keep the butterfly. So back in, I get confused with years. The last Worshipful Company competition 2 years ago, was it? It's every other year. It's supposed to be this year, so that would have been 18. There was a theme of remembrance. So I spent time with Joey, looked at detail, learned that she puts a story into her work, and and I had this idea buzzing around in my head. What could I do? I do not get frustrated when something goes wrong. Not in the workshop. with computers and phones and stuff like that, yeah, that's a different matter. But in the workshop, I don't normally get frustrated. I turned this piece for the Worshipful Company of Turners competition. It was called The Fallen. What I did, we'll clear a space because I'll show you the setup. This is not really, I think I put it on Facebook once, but I was gutted about this, really. It was called The Fallen. So what I've done is I carved out these tall poppies and I carved out little poppies out the stem, and they're the little poppies that come out. And they were supposed to be placed around the base of the piece. And inside the piece, if I hold that up to the camera, you can see there's sort of dots of burning and dots of burning there. And the idea was, and then we've got remembrance poppies around. And the idea of the piece, it was called The Fallen. The idea with the poppies on the floor were for the fallen. The burn marks were the footprints of the soldiers in the trenches. The poppies of remembrance, and these three big poppies was the surgents of the nation we became when we came out of war. I was packing it up on the morning to take it up to the Worshipful Company of competition, and the problem with thin turning, it's fragile. And I snapped this poppy here. It's been glued back on, and I snapped it, and as soon as I snapped it, I put it in the box, and I never even bothered going to the show. I was devastated. That had taken me hours of planning, hours of work, and it's still with me today. I can look at it now and smile, but I didn't at that moment in time. Trust me, I wasn't happy. So that was called The Fallen. So that is something that was done by going and having lessons with other turners. You know, we've all got skills as turners, and lots of people tackle things in different ways. So I still today like going and spending time with other turners, and if they do a particular type of work and I think, wow, yeah, I quite like that, I'd happily go along and spend a bit of time. I was planning, I did a sunset Viking bow, as most of us have done with Nick for a day, and I was planning on going back. Actually, my wife owes me a birthday present. She's going to book me 2 days with Nick Agar, and I thought, well, I'll make that a week. That'll be good fun. So I was chatting with Nick, and he said, well, you're out of luck. I'm off to America. So I said, well, I'm not out of luck. I'll come to America then. I'm not going now, obviously, not for a while anyway. So that was a bit of our turning technique. Combining piercing, get this on the camera, with the bird texturing and colour, I created this piece. This piece is called Cosmos, and I took it to the AAW seminar last year. My memory's gone. Last year, and I was with a mate of mine, Russell Clark, who's probably watching. He tried to watch it last night. He messaged me. So I've been trying to get on the Zoom for half an hour. I said, oh, have you? And he said, yeah, I didn't realise it was tomorrow night. Sorry, Russ. Anyway, so we went to America. So we were walking down a massive hall of work, and we were walking down and bumped into Mark Baker. And Mark Baker said, oh, congratulations. I said, congratulations. What's congratulations? He said, your work, a piece of work, is being selected for critique. I went, oh dear, that ain't good. He said, oh no, that's good. He said, they don't. So I was quite impressed. They picked it up and we went and sat in the critique. Russ was sitting there sliding down the chair saying, I don't want to be here. And me, I was going, oh yeah, that's great. So it got critiqued at the AAW. So that is another sort of little moment in my turning career. I still turn ordinary random brown stuff, but if the wood's interesting, so we used the natural knot in the top there to hollow this out, bit of brown oak, lovely little piece of wood. So there's just been finished with an oil there, and again using the techniques within This is a little bowl here that's been burr cut to give a texture on the rim. So I sort of try and incorporate bits and pieces into my work that I've sort of done, but I don't want to keep turning little cosmoses. You know, I've done that. Let's move on. So I did the bowl. I've played with this sort of stuff, and this all comes on a theme. So this has all been burnt textured under the surface here. Little sycamore pot, it's turned to about 3 mil or so, all burnt textured, and then metal reactive paints. People might say, well, if you're going to cover it in a paint, it's a waste of time spending a couple of hours or a few hours burnt texture in it. But I am a believer, if you're going to do something in wood turning, do it right. Don't cut corners. It's, you know, but you can see they all incorporate a bit of a theme. They all go on a bit of a journey. Then I got into doing these sort of things, sculptural pieces. This is a bit of mallee burr, but again, it's mounted on a bit of bog oak to make it different. Burnt texture and a bit of gilt cream around it. I did that, and I had a piece in the Wood Turning magazine, a big piece of oak burr that I did. I haven't got the magazine with me, but that sold straight away. Someone fell in love with it, and that was about 20 inches. I have now acquired a nice piece of oak burr, so I can do something similar. So that might be something that I revisit as I go. Now, we've got the VB there, and we were talking about earlier about putting piece of wood on there to test it. It was Dave Baskell, and he said, about time you put something on there to test it. Well, trust me, I do test the VB. I don't let it sit there and just collect dust all the time. I'm clearing a bit of space off the desk. Joe, oh, I've got another piece I'll show you in a minute, but I just want to do the show. I come running back to the mic, show Dave that I do put pieces of wood on my lathe. Now, if Joe scans the camera down, we've got another piece here that I can show you in a minute.
That's right.
On the desktop. Out a bit.
Out of it.
So Dave, just to show you that I turn big pieces of wood, there's a little bit of brown oak that's been gilded with gold wax, and the VB really had to work at that. So I hope you're pleased with that. But in more seriousness, this was a fractured bit of elm. Joe's going to bring the camera back. As you can see, it's got a few voids in it, so it was a bit out of balance. Now, all these gaps have been gilded. The piece of wood was over 50 kilos when it went on the lathe. I can't remember if it was the engine hoist or me and Joe together, but we got it on the lathe. It took a bit of turning. It's about 26 inches across, and I think it's something like 10, 11 inches deep. But because the voids, obviously, it was a balance issue, but not for a VB. It's still not been bolted to the floor, so I put big pieces of wood on the VB. So as a last piece of work, I can show you, we've got this. This is a disc. It's been burnt textured around the rim. It's a bit of wall art, and it's used a thing called Peblo paints, and they react and they fragment. So this piece of work, Peblo held a competition for mixed media work. So I thought, well, I'll send a picture in. So I sent a picture of this in, I'll prop that up there, Joe can get a camera on it. I sent a picture in of the piece of work, and I don't know, 2 months later, I got an email saying, your piece has been selected to be displayed in London. Would you like to attend? Da, 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 da. So I said, yeah, oh, fantastic. So me and Mrs. Oliver had a little trip to London. It was hacking down with rain. It wasn't the most pleasant day in the world. So we went up to this gallery in London, and there were proper artists in there, you know, quite flamboyant and all the rest of it. And they started their spiel. It was selected. It was one of the 100 pieces selected. Was me, the only wood turner, I think. So I think that's why it got selected. It's not because it's anything special. They hadn't seen
the only UK artist as well.
they hadn't seen any paint put onto wood in this way. But it was selected, and it made this top 100. And then we found out it was of 450,000 pieces entered from around the world. So that was quite a nice moment in my wood turning career. And that realistically is the journey of my turning and my workshop.
Which metal reactive paints do you use? Do you sell them? What piercing tool do you use?
Right, question time. Okay, so
Did you core this? I'm assuming that's the big bit down there.
no, that was the big elm bowl was not cored. There's a time to core a piece of wood and a time not to core a piece of wood. If you've got that many voids in it, the force of the corer could destroy the piece of wood completely, in my opinion. It's only my opinion. So I would sooner just have a pile of shavings and land up with what I was trying to get than take the chance of destroying the piece of wood. So that's answered that. Tools. By and large, as a piercer at the moment, I use this. Joe's moving the camera around. I use this. This is a Wood Arts product micromotor. It spins at 45,000 RPM. I've got a Dremel, and I've also got a Fulden motor with a big, more torque. If you're doing heavy carving, you want a Fulden with a lot of torque. The little Dremels are all right, but they only spin at about 30,000 RPM. So this spins at 45. Now, when I was with Joey, she uses an NSK, and they spin at something like 400,000 RPM or something like that. I can't remember exactly. So I've got various compressors in the workshop, one to fire up the sandblaster, and then I've got a silent one down here. And my plan is, when I get back into doing fine work, to go for an NSK, because they're quite expensive, but they are so nice to use. So that's what I use at the moment. What were the other questions there?
Those were the two, and then it was what metal reactive paint are you using?
Metal reactive paint. The metal reactive paint I used on that pot was a thing called Verde or Verde.
Verdigris.
In the cabinet. No, it comes from America. Martin Saban Smith had bought it, and he was doing it. That wallet there in front of you. Verde.
Yeah, Verde.
Verde. So it comes a little set. Verde. Martin Saban Smith was bringing them in, so I bought a set, and it works really well. But he stopped doing it. I don't sell them, no. But what I've now bought is Modern Masters do a metal reactive paint. So I've bought some of that to have a play with, but I just not got round to doing a metal reactive piece. So that might be a Saturday morning demo.
What's that piercing tool called again?
This piercing tool is called a micromotor.
Cheyenne N8.
Cheyenne N8. But I get this off of John of Wood Art Products, because I think he does something with the handpiece or something. I don't know. But I'm one of those. You could pick something like this up on eBay for 100 quid, I suppose, or something. John's about 230. But John knows he understands these things, and he knows his stuff about them. I don't know my stuff about them. So rather than spend 100 quid, then go and spend another 100 quid, and then spend another 100 quid, and another 100 quid till you get to where you want to go. I know Mark uses these, Mark Stanger, so that's how I learned about them. So I went straight to John, bought that. It's been a terrific bit of kit. It's pierced everything that I want to throw at it. But I have used Joey's NSK, the air tool thing, and that is at another level. But this is 200 quid-ish. NSK, 700 quid-ish, plus you need a decent compressor, another grand. You know, I've got the compressor, so I keep saying to Mrs. Oliver's my birthday coming up.
The owners
She's
have
not
sold
listening.
Hang on. The owners have sold the company, and I think that Verday's new name, Martin, was.
No, I think the Verday's new name, Martin was on Jeff Herman's stand. There's Verday, it's in Kansas. Yeah, it was in Kansas. That's where he brought it back, Dave. So he brought some back. He was going to do it. He stopped doing it. He said there was a lot of problems getting the stuff. So, but it's good stuff. It works really well. I've used it on a few things that have gone, they've sold. And that little pot was something that I did that really has stayed with me. What else have we got?
I can't scroll up. If anyone's got any questions that I haven't read out yet, if you can type them up, because I haven't got a mouse near me to scroll up.
Right, can I not hear
Well, they're all muted.
Paul?
Or we
Right.
can unmute.
Okay. So I think that's me. If you've got questions, far away. If not, then
Yeah, there was a
That's
couple
me.
of questions. One was about can they see what you do with your mortar stuff?
What is
what I did with my mortiser. Right.
Hang on, what?
Hold on.
You've also got what's your favourite hollowing tool? Or what company name? What's the company name of your favourite hollowing tool?
My favourite hollowing tool is the Simon Hope little 6mm mini carbide cutter. The little it's a cutter, it's not a scraper. And that cutter, you can rip wood away with it, but you can also get a real nice finesse cut with it. And it's really, really quite nice.
And it's available at Oliver's Woodturning.
Yeah. Can you go upstairs and look in the boxes? There's that oval, look like the old oil lamp thing with the black holes in it. Joe's going to have a look through the mortise a bit. I think I might have a block of wood. Hold on a second. Right, in my tidying up, my block of wood's gone. So what I do with the mortiser is I wanted to bore nice round or square holes down through a piece of wood. And I tried to do it in the pillar drill, but it wouldn't go all the way through. It didn't have enough reach and it was a bit vibrating. So I bought a little mortiser off Charnwood. It was cut for 300 quid. So I could puncture all the way through the wood. And I had the, do you remember the old oil lamps that you got, that you turned them on and they all globulated around in the other oil? And I had an idea of that shape with some...
Do you mean in the box with all the work in?
Yeah, being one of the
when you cut
boxes.
through.
Yeah, well, got all the way through. So I had this idea, thinking about this oil lamp. So what I did is I caught the mortiser and then I started drilling through pieces of wood with square holes and round holes and all the way through and part of the way through and different sides and stuff. And then I turned the piece and started messing around. And then in the finished piece landed up as a little cylinder of wood shaped about this tall, but not hollow, just with holes bored into it, painted black. I quite liked it, and that was the last time the Mortison was on. So that's not been on for a couple 3 years, I don't think. And I didn't carry on doing that sort of work. You know, once I'd done it, I went, yeah, it's okay, and moved on and went back to me colouring and piercing and texturing type stuff. The Peblo paint that I use, family, Malcolm, Ed, what is Peblo paint you use? The Peblo paint I use is down here. Oh. It's called Fantasy and Prism, or Prism Fantasy. There, I'll bring that up to the camera. And they do 3 different sort of styles in it, and it fragments, or it's glass paint, and there's all different colours. Now the only problem is you've got to learn how to use it. If you use this stuff, do not do it in your workshop. You've got to be at room temperature for it to dry and fragment properly, and it takes a couple of days to dry. I tried to do it in a demo at Sand and Wood Turners, and we had this small of the big piece that I did there, a small piece, just a little test piece like this. No, I thought I had a bit, and because it was in the workshop, the paint needed a couple of days on a level surface, and we put it under a box to protect it from the shaving. But it was still moving by the end of the day. It was sloshing around all over the place. So you've got to use it at a room temperature and have somewhere you can leave it. And once you've done it, just leave it. And it's a few days.
What is the name of the carbide hollowing tool that you can extend up to 7 feet?
The Exocet. So the Exocet was made, I'll hold that cutter up. It's not a carbide tool, this is a cutter. It's got a ring cutter in the top. It's in a figure of 8 with a shield. It was made in New Zealand. I forget the guy's name, but he did this, and then there was a big legal battle between him and Woodcut and someone else. And he left. But if I bring this bar out in the handle, it's just back there a little way, it's somewhere there, so it's a lance. You could put a bigger handle on it, but there. And trust me, when I was with Stuart, you know Stuart, he's done some deep hollowing and some record stuff. And I was told in the early days, you know, hollowing to 6 inches is one thing. Hollowing at 9 inches is something else. Hollowing at 12 is something else again because of the downward pressures. And then once you go above 12, well, the rule of thumb is for every 5 inches over the tool rest, for every inch over the tool rest, you want 5 behind you or a lot of weight. When I've been on this thing like this, balanced down, and this tip is as fierce as they come. If you get that wrong, it really goes. But if you're gentle and just feel it around, it's just like using a little hollowing tool. So, but that's an Exocet. The cutter is very similar to the Woodcut. I know there was a battle. I was fortunate. What happened? I learned about this when I bought the VB. I got loads of tools with it, and I had a pair of these Exocet and a couple of Rollies. I was fortunate to find a couple of more cutters, and then I found a couple of more tools on my sort of hunting on eBay and stuff. So I bought them. So I own about 4 of them. And sometimes you just want the paints. Now, the little carbide tool, if I put that into a long handle, I can get some depth, probably 20 inches or so. You could quite easily mount a little cutting tip into your own bar, you know. But yeah, that works, you know. And I think if you learn how to use a cutter, you can hollow with anything, really. Joe's still looking for the other piece that was done on. I've got boxes of work upstairs and I don't know where it is, so he's gone looking, see if he can find it for you. This is a smaller Exocet that I found just on a handle. Someone's probably made a handle for a short bar, and so I do a bit of hollowing like that. It's like using a ring cutter really with a shield, that's what it is. So any more for any more? Turntech, yeah, it's something like Turntech. I did read up on them and learnt the story and all that. What colour paints and stains do you prefer? Do you apply some by airbrush? Yeah, I use airbrush. If I'm using airbrush, I quite like the golden. Most of the paints I use for serious pieces of work are golden artist colours. It's what Bimpo used, Joe Richardson uses, and a lot of the other fine artists. The reason they use it is golden artist colours is the pigment is light tested for 100 years. So it's quality paint. And if you're going to spend many hours on doing a piece of work, then why not use the best paints that you can? Because if you're going to sell it for serious money, the person that buys it has got a right to expect that everything about what you've done is to the best quality and the best ability that you can do. So that's what I do. When I do, Joe can't find it, when I do something like this with the burrs, I normally use chestnut spirit stains. What I do is I brush them in with a bit of towel or a bit of paper towel, wipe them on, and then I sand off in between coats and build it up. And some of them will have, I don't know, 40, 50 coats of stain, sanding in between each coat until I get the colour to where I want it to be. But I don't try and finish it in a day. I'll stain it, spend whatever time on it, then I'll leave it on the lathe and walk in and out for a few days, or I'll take it off the lathe in the truck and leave it on the bench, walk in and out, and when I look at it and think, yeah, that's there, then it's there. But if I don't think that, then I'll put it back on the lathe and add a bit more colour. The beauty we've got as wood turners that use paints and stains and stuff in their work, if we really mess it up, we just get the gouge, turn it away because it's not gone into the wood that deeply, turn it away and start again. So, you know, airbrushing, I use golden artist colours. They do a fluid airbrush, an airbrush extender. Staining pieces of wood like that, by and large, I use chestnut spirit stains. This is a test piece that I've been playing around with. That's the chestnut, a bit dusty. That's the chestnut iridescent paint. So I've been playing around with that. This was with, that was spirit stain. I've used the intrinsic colours. I think.
Have you been answering the questions on chat as well?
Well, I'll just answer them up. This was something I'm messing around with, teaching people how to colour, and that's intrinsic, Martin Saban-Smith's intrinsic water-based colours. And that, well, it might look a mess to you now, but you can throw all the colours on there any way you want, and it just looks like a real mess. Then you just stipple it with white and keep stippling with white. and it turns it into a lighter pastel colour that works. So that's, if people are worried about colour and I'm teaching them how to colour, that's one way that I do it, because they go, oh, and then they put the white on it. I go, oh, that looks quite nice now. So you just got to make people feel good about it, and it's got to be fun. You know, that's what it's about. So,
Do you use a hollowing jig, or do you use calipers and eye?
Do I use a hollowing jig? Badly. No, I don't really use a hollowing jig, but I've got a Simon Oak hollowing jig in there, because if someone, when the shop was open, the shop's been shut since March and it probably won't open this year. I'm doing everything online. But if someone wants to see one working, I feel that I should know how it works, so I've used one. If someone wants to see it working, I can set it up. But if I'm doing a little oliform, by the time I've taken the tailstock off and got the jig on there, put the tool in there, done this, done that, the thing's halfway hollowed, 3/4 of the way hollowed. And I think the skill of a wood turner should be that if that's your chosen subject, hollowing, you should be able to do it by hand. You know, if I was to enter a piece into a competition, I want someone to pick it up, feel the weight of it, and do whatever they want to do to judge it. And I know in my heart that I've done that by hand. You know, I don't want to use a laser guided system to turn down a 3 mil. If I've got to use a laser guided system to turn down a 3 mil, that's the problem of a jig, in my opinion. You know, two of us could turn the same piece. One's used it and I've used it by hand. I think it should be done by hand, so I do it by hand. And I've spent time learning how to do it by hand. And I think you'll find most turners can do it, even the ones that use the jigs, you know, the real good guys that use the jig. If you said to them do it by hand, they could do it by hand, you know. So that's partly me. I use traditional tools. I don't use carbide scrapers, you know. I use bowl gouge. And I was taught by Tom, use a bowl gouge. Well, there's not a lot you can't do. And he's right, 90% of the turning is done with a 3/8 bowl gouge. And yeah, it's very rare that I have to revert to something else. You do, but it all depends what you're tackling.
Could you use a crutch handle for a long tool?
Could you use a
crutch handle for your long
a
tool?
crutch handle?
I can't see why you couldn't.
You could make a handle out of anything, really. What you've got.
I think they're talking about the actual head of a crutch for your long tool to give you extra stability in the arm as you're holding it.
Now, you want to be a little bit careful, right? So if you're going to start going deep, proper deep, just testing it, you're only doing it to test yourself. You don't want to start strapping yourself up or something, because if you get a catch, you've got to be able to get out of the way. If you're strapped in with a brace here and something, and you get a mighty catch at that,
or even if it's strapped on your forearm,
you're going to do some damage to yourself, serious damage. So I wouldn't suggest strapping yourself into hollow deep. You know, if you think you've got to strap yourself into hollow deep, then don't go there and do the hollowing deep thing. You know, stick to 9, 10, 12 inches. You know, when you can hollow 12 inches comfortably and guide your tool around freehand and not have to think, oh, I'm going to get a bang, I'm going to get a bang, then start going to 16 inch, 18 inch, 20 inch, 24 inch and pushing it. But if you think you've got to strap yourself in, don't. Use one of the, Pat Carroll, I think, uses a bar type jig system. It's not a jig. It just supports the tool. So he puts the tool through. He's still guiding it around and doing the stuff with it. But this sandwiches
there's a link to crutch handle.
Ah, right. There's a link. So, yeah, that's more than I know, but I wouldn't use one. I'd do it back.
And then there was a question about
when you burn your work.
Yeah.
Does it smell? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Smell of burnt wood. So if you're going to do a lot of burning, firstly,
and I think the key point here was, does it smell like it for a while? Yes.
Yeah.
It will smell
you
like
want a charcoal extractor to take the smoke away from you. But what I did with those, once I'd finished burning it, and you could smell the burning, I started spraying it with lemon oil. Lemon oil citrus, so it takes away some of the burning smell. and it doesn't, because it's so thin, it just soaks into the wood and doesn't change the consistency or the colour or anything. So I use lemon oil just to take down that. Some people like the burnt smell. Some people go, oh, it's burnt. So lemon oil, everybody likes a bit of lemon
White
oil.
vinegar works too, apparently.
Does it? I've never tried white vinegar. I like lemon oil, orange oil, citrus sort of flavour smells, you know, so that's what I use. No, I don't make cheese scones in this oven. This is purely for baking. But I have got a nice tray of wax. Nice tray of wax to edge the blanks with. So, should Mrs. Oliver ever become untoward, then I'll ship her over here and say, there's your kitchen. I'll put her hammer up in the corner and that'll be a lot. Say what I like when she's not here, can't I? Don't repeat that joke.
How much?
Oh, Mrs. Oliver's outside the door. I'm in trouble. Uh-oh. Right. Everybody happy?
Yeah, I think we run out of questions, Ed, so yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Right, I'm going to unmute everybody, or they can unmute themselves at least. So you can unmute yourself and join in if you like. Thanks for doing that, Ed. That was
No problem. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ed.
Yes, Ed, really good, thanks. Brilliant.
Good. Glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Didn't fall asleep.
Thanks very much.
No problem. It helped me because it made me clean my workshop up. I've been meaning to do it for months.
Can I say one thing, Ed?
Yeah.
Regarding the hollowing jig,
Yep.
I've got arthritis and a bad back, and I got a shoulder problem.
Use a jig.
What I was going to say with the jig, I agree with the laser and all on the camera, but all the jig does, without all the extras, is take away the strain. You still.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
How
Anybody that's got shoulder problems, arm problems, back problems, all that, why stand there and put yourself through the pain? Then use the jig. Yeah, I would. And if my shoulder went or my back went, and I want to order something, I'd put the jig on the lathe. You know.
You're lucky. You're lucky. Your husband at your age, I would have thought it would have gone a long time ago.
I assume that was my fault. I'd been in the background, eh? Yeah, but I agree. Yeah, if you got a problem, a jig all day long, and you're quite right. You can't just put the jig on.
No.
And, you know, you've got to be able to use it. So yeah.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
I'll be charging people who come in my workshop now. It's so clean. There's not even a spider in here. Hey, unbelievable.
That's because the cat eats them.
Ed, what size compressor do you use to drive your equipment?
Right, now, there's a little thing. So, my sandblaster, I bought about 5 years ago. And I bought a little CD compressor, 50 litre, that stands behind. It makes a lot of noise. And I thought, this ain't really, because I wanted it to clean the bark out. When I peel the bark off of, I clear the bark off of natural edge stuff sometimes. And it weren't really doing it, so I was spending a lot of time with a wire brush. Anyway, I had a guy in, because I've got a 2 CFM Bambi compressor, what the dentists use for airbrushing and stuff.
Right.
And it had gone wrong, so I got him in. I said, this sandblaster's never really worked properly with that compressor. And he looked at the cabinet, and on the cabinet it says you need 15 CSM.
Right.
And my little compressor there was putting out around about 8 CFM. He said, it's never going to work. So a month or so ago, at the other end of the workshop now, and it's down the other end because it is noisy, I've got a 14.7 CFM compressor an Airmaster from Machine Mart. It was about 300 quid. I didn't want to spend thousands to do a bit of sandblasting, and that thing is lethal. It now blasts. Joe putting the camera on it. That thing blasts sand. So sandblasting cabinets like that, I can tell you need 15 CFM, and that compressor down there is noisy. It's twin engined, but it puts out 14.7 and it works the sandblaster. So I can now even have a go at Pascal's work. You know, if I get some wet oak and go for it with an airbrush.
And has the sandblaster got the facility to reuse the sand again?
Yeah, what happens is this sandblaster, the grit is shot out the gun, goes down into the hopper, and it's got a tube in there that sucks it back up and a trapdoor at the bottom. So what I do is when I've sandblasted something and got all the rubbish out of it, I then let the grit out of the bottom. That's right. Let the grit out of the bottom and filter it in a fine sieve to collect all the rubbish. Otherwise, that rubbish starts blocking the gun. The other thing you've got to do is put a moisture trap on the air compressor. Otherwise, the moisture gets in the gun and then it sort of starts trying to stick it. But I don't know if it was sticking it because the first little compressor didn't have enough oomph to drive it out, or if that's the way it is. But the guy said to me, make sure you've got a moisture trap. So I've got 2 outlets on it. One comes through an oil up moisture trap in case I want to use air tools, and the other one I can bypass that and just purely come through a moisture trap. If you go through both, it reduces the pressure a bit.